It can't be bargained with. It can't be reasoned with. It doesn't feel pity or remorse or fear. And it absolutely will not stop. Ever. Until you are dead.
Welcome back to Thinking Critical. This is Wes, and I don't know. Normally, I don't run with a lot of bleeding cool stuff, but when I read this rumor today that Superman was being set up to lead the Authority in 2021, I was reading it, and all of a sudden everything started to make sense for me. I was like, oh my goodness, this is exactly why a lot of the things that are happening in Superman right now are actually happening. It's to set up this transition, which is terrible in my opinion. But I'm going to hash it out here with my good friend Perch from Comics by Perch. How you doing?
Hey, I'm doing okay. I'm doing okay. You said it well. This is one of those, it makes perfect sense, and we don't like where the car is headed.
Absolutely. So I remember when I was reading, the early issues of Superman, and Superman lets, John Kent go into space. I was like, this feels weird. Like it doesn't make sense for the character. Then you find out, oh, well, it was to age up Jonathan Kent. Well, okay. Even though it didn't fit the character, it fit the story that Bendis wanted to tell. And now lately I'm like, why would the world turn on Superman for representing them at the United Nations of Planets or whatever it is? Like, it would make sense. No one would be upset with Superman doing this, but okay, it's because he's going to end up leading the Authority, and like a fascist group that is willing to save you by any means necessary, whether you want it or not.
Yeah. So, okay, you're exactly right. I think there's two parts to this. I mean, part one is, hey, it's nice when comics put little breadcrumbs in things and the stories make sense. So Superman taking on this other role and being the whole with the planets, and the dynamic that just happened in the comic where I don't know what it is, the FBI or the UN representative, whoever it is, finds Lois Lane and basically tells her, hey, not one more toe out of line. We're okay with this, but not really. But I guess we'll live with it for now.
One more mistake, and that's it for you and your husband.
For you and your husband, exactly. But she didn't tell him. Then she was told this and was supposed to pass the message along to old Clark, and she doesn't do it. They go and sack out, and so I think all this sets up. It makes sense if we're going this direction. Now, Bleeding Cool is known for exaggerating, so who knows if this is actually the Authority or something that kind of resembles the Authority. But I do think it makes sense. So that's the good news, in that at least these stories are coherent-ish to go somewhere. The bad news is this destination, I think, is terrible.
The first thing that popped in my head was Captain America saying "Hail Hydra." Like, okay, that completely goes against this character. Now, I don't think this is that far, but it's certainly taking one of the flagship characters for DC and taking him and taking everything that he stands for, throwing it in the garbage just so you can do an edgy story where Superman, the symbol of justice in the American way, can be the leader of a fascist organization. And these are the kind of changes, and I don't want to understate this, overstate this. These are the kind of changes. They don't just make people leave the character or maybe leave the title. These are the kinds of things, if they're not done, even if they're done well, make readers leave the hobby because it's that offensive and that stupid. And it's a spit in the face of anyone who loves Superman. Just thinking about Superman leading the Authority.
Yeah, I mean, it makes me think that the writer doesn't necessarily understand what made the Authority work or what makes Superman work. So, I mean, I was a big fan of the Authority comic. I thought it was an interesting way to look at superheroes in a different way, that it was, what would happen if superheroes took matters into their own hands and did so in brutal ways and kind of imposed their will on the world, and how would the world react and all the rest. There were interesting things to play around with. And in the Wildstorm universe, it was cool for them to play around with these concepts. I always thought, and DC thought so as well, when they did the kind of the Authority with Manchester Black and back in Superman way back in the day, they did an Authority-like storyline. And it didn't ever quite fit within DC. When you have this established universe with Superman, Wonder Woman, and Green Lantern, all these characters that we know, the Justice League, doing that kind of story just doesn't fit. It just doesn't fit that universe well. You've got some constraints. You can't go as far as you can. In the Authority comic book, you could completely rewrite the world order and live with those consequences, because you didn't have that built-up history or those characters. So I think that what made the Authority work was really an examination of going too far. That's not exactly what they're doing here, or at least as we can tell. And we're speculating, certainly. But on the other hand, on Superman, I mean, part of the whole, what makes that character great is his kind of commitment to self-sacrifice. And even though he came from another planet, really adopting Earth as his home and being, with humility to the people around us, why he had his secret identity, because he wanted to be seen as one of the humans, to be able to really understand and not cast himself above others. And so the idea that he's leading an authority-like regime it's a very definition of being above others. It's making decisions for other people. And it just feels, like if this is truly where it's going, I feel like the third act, we get into, of course, Superman does something as a member of the authority, the government doesn't like it. So now they're working with Lex Luthor or who knows what to kind of, or Leviathan, to try and track him and hunt him down. So we get that kind of tired storyline. And then we get Lois, who's, she doesn't like what her husband's doing, so they get to have some arguments and fights. And I feels like I already feel, I can sense the beats of where this thing is going, and I don't want to. I don't want to read this story.
Well, and it's already kind of available in Injustice.
Sure, exactly. We've seen this before. That's the whole problem. We've seen all this before many times.
In Elseworlds, it doesn't make sense really in DC continuity. It's not going to make any sense. And I have zero faith, after everything that I've witnessed with Brian Michael Bendis writing Superman and Man of Steel, Superman, and Action Comics, that he will actually execute this with any style. It's going to be ham-fisted. It's going to be terrible dialogue. And it's probably, I might be wrong on this one, but it feels like this will be Brian Michael Bendis' vehicle to address the issues that he sees happening in the world today.
Yeah, he will want to tie it into some parallels around overstepping and authority and all those pieces. I think he does like to do that. We did get the news that he's in his last mile, if you will, with Superman. So if this is his big third arc, then we can say, okay, well, his first step was to kind of shake up the family, age up John Kent, send him away, prep for the Legion of Superheroes. The second arc was about introducing some new villains and getting Clark to basically drop his secret identity, which I think is, again, as we talked about before, a big mistake kind of into that character. And the third act is him kind of overstepping his bounds as a hero and going too far and leading this authority-like group that then puts him at odds with the world. And again, I don't who wants to really see that? You use a Captain America analogy, and I think it's a good one. I mean, maybe this isn't as far as Hydra, but now we've got a Captain America who's kind of mistrusted. And are we going to get that with Superman? Are we going to have to go back to some of the grounded storylines? And we've seen all this before. To rehash all these old plots in kind of one vehicle with some snappy Joss Whedon-like dialogue, I'm exhausted thinking about it.
Yeah, I mean, I just read the latest issue of Action Comics. It's so bad. I almost feel like I dropped the ball on this. I probably should have just kept on these Brian Michael Bendis Superman and Action Comics reviews, but I got so tired of reading them. But it's just getting worse and worse and worse. And now that I see actually where he was going with it, because like I said, I was talking to Dylan. I was like, this doesn't make any sense. The Earth wouldn't turn on Superman, Clark Kent, because he wanted to represent, the Earth with the United Planets or whatever. But now that you see where he's taken it, it's like, okay, well, it makes sense for Brian Michael Bendis to do this so he can ruin Superman some more.
Yeah. No, I mean, and it is that, I forget, I think maybe it was Jonathan Hickman who said, when you come into a character, it's part of your responsibility to be additive, to do things with the comic that you're writing, and then to put the toys back in the toy box so the person who comes in after you isn't forced to clean up a big mess. And if this truly is Bendis's final arc with the character, it's not going to morph into 5 other things. I don't want to see us come out of death metal, go into whatever this new world was like, and have a brand new authority #1 with Superman and a bunch of other kind of edgy superheroes protecting the universe, and the Earth is turned against them, and Lois is angry. Again, we're speculating, so maybe none of this comes to pass. But who wants this? And I think the reveal of taking away the secret identity, a lot of these things, it's just leaving a huge mess for the next writer who has to come in and clean all this stuff up.
You do mention it might not be as bad as we're speculating. Of course, speaking of Jonathan Hickman, in Dawn of X, they use Marauders on a title there, and they don't exactly represent what the original Marauders in the X-Men universe stood for. So maybe this is a kinder, gentler version of the Authority, But with everything that I see in comics and politics and every day, I just don't trust that. I honestly believe that that's what he's going to use this for, is for a storytelling vehicle, so that he can get some of his issues with the current day politics out there and just ruin Superman some more. The Authority, it just makes no sense.
Yeah, I mean, it doesn't need to happen. I mean, again, and I think you and I have talked about this. I've talked about this. We've all talked about this. Superman is actually a complex, interesting character. You can do a lot of things. He's got a great rogues gallery. You've got a universe to explore. I mean, unlike other superheroes that are restrained by planetary things, you can do anything you want with Superman. And I think the gift of his son and kind of the recreation of his marriage and the dynamics of what you can do with Lois and all these different pieces, and including his identity as Clark Kent as a reporter. And there's some great Superman stories in the past of Clark can't reveal his secret identity because he's trapped with a bunch of other people, but he still needs to save the day. How does he do it? There's a lot of great storytelling abilities with the character of Superman. And what bothers me about this run, and definitely some people I know who listen to us who are fans of Bendis, and if so, great. But what irritates me about this run is one by one, it's just taken all these things away. It's not bringing new stories in. It's saying, okay, what is Superman, the father-son dynamic? Let's just kind of wreck that and take that away. Let's take away all the abilities to tell stories about a secret identity. Let's make his marriage to Lois awkward again. I mean, it's like you're actively removing storytelling ability away as you're putting this in. You're not replacing it with anything interesting.
Yeah, he's just creating a bunch of new characters that are basically rehashes of old characters. Of course, now we know that in the future there's going to be a new god that's probably more powerful than all the other new gods, because it's a Brian Michael Bendis creation. So it has to be more powerful and more important than anything Jack Kirby created, with his own original creation. Obviously, that there are a lot of rumors out there, and I don't even think they're rumors at this point. I think people basically know that Brian Michael Bendis, along with, I think it's Scott Snyder, are like the creative directors of DC Comics moving forward. And my mind is just blown that DC could just kill all this momentum they have. Everything going on with Death Metal, with Batman Joker, where we got 3 Jokers coming up. Superman is dead in the water. People are excited to see where DC Comics is going after Death Metal. Why is this guy still have a big part in the future of DC Comics? How many times can he fuck up during this run here? He's basically killed all the sales on Superman. He's basically destroyed the entire Wonder Comics relaunch. It was DOA essentially, when it came back to market, just because of his storytelling, the way he's treated the characters. Legion of Superheroes is an absolute disaster. You can't read it. Event Leviathan bombed big time. No one's interested in any more Leviathan stories. Everything he touches turns to dog shit at DC Comics, yet somehow he keeps getting elevated, and now he's essentially taken, or he's the co-creative director. He's splitting what Dan Didio was doing when he was fired. How do you fuck up? How do you fail your way up the ladder like this at DC Comics? What are they thinking?
You're passionate, man. No, I understand. I think this was a huge investment in a guy, and in addition to just what he's paid, when in any comic industry, when you give somebody control over a lot of that IP, it's not just what you're paying that person; it's the future value of that IP that you have to consider. And I guess the argument can be made we're not there in the halls of DC's executives, and maybe there's some chart there that shows that this is adding more value than it's taking away. From the layman's perspective, all we can do is speculate on the outside as we're looking at this from a retailer perspective, from a fan perspective. We look at the numbers and we see at the moment more value is being taken away than has been added. So regardless of whatever they're paying Bendis and everything else, it's just the value to DC as a property. Superman is not a hot title right now. No matter how many articles and awards get bought and are paid for to say it's the best title, it's not burning up the shelves. It's not bringing in heavy new readers. Like you said, Wonder Comics, all the rest of these things, it's not bringing in the value. So you hope that at least at some point it all kind of comes together. There's some big master plan and some amazing books come out. Kind of like what happened with Bendis and his architecture of Avengers. It did ultimately lead to that. It doesn't look that way here, though. It just looks like a lot of subtraction. And I think I don't see it. I don't see the master plan. I hope it comes. I hope we're sitting here a year from now saying we don't like it, but hey, at least it's making money. That would be great. But right now, it just looks like it's taken away from comics, not brought anything in. And this latest story with the Authority and everything else, my best expression is just I'm tired. I'm exhausted just even thinking about what those books are going to look like.
Yeah, I'm sorry if it felt like I was yelling at you, Perch. I am passionate about this.
No, I'm with you. I'm with you. I'll say it too. I read these comics. It is painful to see. I do like John Romita Jr. I know some don't, but I think he's a talented guy. And I read those pages, and it looks like he's kind of phoning it in. And these plots with just 8,000 words on a page of just garbage. These aren't fun to read. These aren't fun to enjoy. And every issue, it just seems like they're peeling one more piece away from comics. So I'm with you. I'm not a fan. I will take. You may be surprised with it. Bring Tom King back and have Superman be depressed for 100 issues. I take that over this shit.
We were talking. There was somebody on social media because I made fun of Bendis's latest issue of Action Comics. You're like, who do you think's a better writer right now, Bendis or King? I was like, it's not even close. Tom King is a far better comic book writer right now. I might not like what he does with the character, but he is a better writer of comic books. Bendis can't execute anything right now. I just don't get it.
It's, and it's always a disclaimer. There are people who like Bendis, and that's awesome. Good. You find a comic you enjoy, awesome. You should stick with it, and that's great. So my dislike or my distaste for something, it doesn't impact you at all. You should enjoy what you enjoy. But I'm with you. I said the same thing on Twitter with you. I think King, you got to give him credit in the sense that at least King's characters all sound different. It doesn't. I mean, you can literally just randomize the word bubbles in any Bendis comic. It does not matter. It all accounts to the same place. And now people online will be quick to put in comments saying, well, King's also terrible. Sure. We're comparing two. We're not providing an option C here. I think in terms of somebody who can craft a story, I do think King, it's crazy. Just contemplate that, everybody. That's where it's at.
Well, I do agree with you. I'm dumbfounded. I'm flabbergasted here, Perch. But then again, I'm not, because once I read the article, the rumor article on Bleeding Cool, I was like, oh yeah, that makes perfect sense, because this is all confusing. It doesn't make sense with the character, but obviously it makes sense with what Bendis is building to. So at least that it's coherent. I'll give him that.
No, yes, exactly. It leads to one place. It's fine. It's subtractive, and I complain with so many characters right now. You're subtracting value, you're not adding them. And with Superman, you're just doing it at a very just aggressive pace. If they truly do the Authority, I mean, I don't want to see a Xerox copy of the Authority with Superman crammed in. I mean, why not go grab some really talented writers who did a great job with the Authority and just relaunch the Authority in its own little Elseworlds universe? Just do that. If you want to do the Authority, you can make plenty of money. You don't need to cram Superman into it. It's nuts. Yeah,
the Authority works, but I don't think it works with Superman.
No,
you're really diluting both properties because they don't mix.
They don't mix, and that's why you don't have the Authority in the DC universe. Again, there was this Manchester Black Authority-ish storyline in Superman, and it wasn't the best storyline because it doesn't fit either character. So great. Like Sean Gordon Murphy has his Murphyverse, like you have these different imprints, Elseworlds, do an Authority comic. Go nuts. Make Injustice 4 and have Superman lead an Authority over there. Whatever you want to do. But just don't. This is a stupid outcome, and I pity the writer that has to follow this.
As do I. Well, Perch, I do appreciate your time today. Sorry I got so amped up there, but enough is enough.
There's not enough Patron to get me past this.
I do agree with you. I hope you have a good day.
You too.
If you enjoyed this video, please give it a like. I would appreciate it very much. It helps us attract more views for the channel. Subscribe for future commentary, comic book news, and reviews. And don't forget to ring the bell for notifications. If you want to talk comics, movies, and much, much more, you can follow me on Twitter at Wes_from_TC. With that, Salamat Po, and I'm out.